Let's see. Go ahead.
Okay. Our mission, Helping Parents Heal, is a nonprofit organization dedicated to assisting parents whose children have passed. Through support and resources offered, we aspire to help individuals become shining light parents, meaning a shift from a state of emotional heaviness to one of hopefulness and greater peace of mind. Helping Parents Heal goes a step beyond other groups by allowing the open discussion of spiritual experiences and afterlife evidence in a non-dogmatic way. Helping Parents Heal affiliate groups welcome everyone, regardless of religious or non-religious background, and encourage open dialogue. Attendance at this meeting is voluntary. We hope that participants will learn from and share with each other. Discussions here are confidential and not designed to replace traditional therapy or spiritual counseling. These Zoom meetings that are run by leadership are not confidential. These meetings typically feature guest presenters and are posted on YouTube so that affiliate members worldwide can watch and benefit. Neither type of Helping Parents Heal meeting is designed to replace traditional therapy or spiritual counseling. Helping Parents Heal offers a wide variety of speakers, allowing parents to learn about many possible ways to heal. This includes presenters covering progressive topics such as afterlife evidence and connecting with our children who've passed. The views expressed by our guest speakers may or may not reflect the opinions of Helping Parents Heal leaders and members, so we ask that you take from their presentations whatever may benefit you personally. Welcome, everyone. We're so glad you could join us this evening. You're in for a real treat. Thank you, Mark Anthony, for being here.
Yes, thank you so much for being here. And thank you, Mark and Rocky, for being here. And thank you, Lisa, for being here as well. We were just on talking to Lisa because she was just recently saw Mark and Rocky at the conference that was held in Sedona and spent time with them. But in any case, let's go ahead first and just read Mark's bio. I think all of you know how learned he is, but it's so interesting to hear about his background. Mark Anthony, JD, psychic explorer, psychic lawyer, is a fourth-generation science-based evidential psychic medium and Oxford-educated attorney who has tried over 100 jury trials. He is licensed to practice law in Florida, Washington, D.C., and before the United States Supreme Court. His brand, The Psychic Explorer, arose from his extensive background in science, quantum physics, near-death experiences, history, archaeology, philosophy, and theology. He examines mystical locations around the world to explore ancient ruins, mysteries, and supernatural phenomena. Mark appears nationwide on TV and radio, including the CBS show The Doctors, Gaia TV, and the Discovery Channel. He is a regular guest on Coast to Coast AM and co-hosts The Psychic and the Doc on Transformation Network. He is a headline speaker at organizations including Edgar Cayce ARE, International Association for Near-Death Studies, IANS, the Shift Network, Spiritual Awakenings International, Helping Parents Heal, Vail Symposium, and universities Brown, Columbia, Harvard, and Yale. Mark is a VIP columnist for Best Holistic Life magazine and author of 3 bestsellers. The Afterlife Frequency has won multiple awards and is designated one of the top books about faith by prettyprogressive.com. Both The Afterlife Frequency and Evidence of Eternity were considered for Pulitzer Prizes. Never Letting Go is recommended by grief counselors and hospices worldwide. You can learn more about Mark by visiting his website, which is www.afterlifefrequency.com. I will put it in the chat box. And without further ado, please join me, Irene, Lisa, and all of us in welcoming Mark Anthony, psychic explorer, psychic lawyer. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Irene, Lisa, and everybody. Thank you, Shining Light parents, for having me. I want to Tonight, I'm going to be talking about the healing synergy of spiritual synchronicity. So bear with me while I go ahead and engage screen share. Okay, hold on. Can everybody see the main screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is the healing synergy of spiritual synchronicity. The Hindus have a prayer that life is as fragile as a drop of dew on the petal of a flower. And never is that more apparent than losing a child. And that shows us how truly fragile life is. Crying and the tears of grief may seem painful, but the truth is, crying and shedding tears of grief is actually extremely healing. Scientific studies have shown that grief tears contain stress hormones, which are chemically different from reflex tears. Reflex tears are like when you sneeze from pollen or dust. Grief tears, and everybody here who's part of this event tonight knows exactly what grief tears are. Those are when you're crying in a profound state of grief. But the thing is, crying produces endorphins, and the endorphins are the feel-good hormones in your body. Crying also activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the PNS. And all of these are verified by studies at the University of Southern California, St. Paul Ramsey Medical Center, Minneapolis, and the University of Pittsburgh. So when you have a good cry, afterwards, you feel exhausted and relieved. Well, the truth is, what's happening is when you shed tears of grief, the chemicals which actually cause depression are being secreted from your body. And then, like the studies show, it releases the feel-good endorphins. And I work a lot with men in particular. That's why I chose this picture of a man crying, because guys, we're raised not to cry. Women are better at expressing and confronting their emotions than we are, but it's extremely important, guys, for us to learn how to cry. And the bravest man I ever knew taught me that a real man is never afraid to cry for someone he loves who died. And that guy was a U.S. Navy SEAL that I called Dad. Tears, though, become tidal waves, and life as you know it is swept away, and then you're lost in the jungle of grief, and that's a terrible place to be. And I know everybody here has been lost in that jungle, and you feel that you can't get out of it. Well, spirits, the spirits of your children, can help guide you on your path through the jungle of grief into a state of acceptance, and through that acceptance, finding inner peace. But where do you turn for that guidance? Is it faith? Is it science? It's both. Faith teaches us that the soul, also known as a spirit, and in realms of science and psychology and psychiatry as consciousness, pre-exists the body, comes into our body, and then lives on after the body dies. We know from the first law of thermodynamics in physics that energy is neither created nor destroyed, only transferred from one form to another. Neuroscience is the study of the human brain. The brain is essentially a carbon-12 and salt resonator floating in water. It has an electromagnetic field, and even though the brain is only 2% of the body's weight, it uses over 20% of its electromagnetic energy. The official position of neuroscience is that the brain creates consciousness, the who and what we are, our sense of self, through chemical reactions and electrical impulses. However, neuroscientists cannot explain how. Science is divided into two fields of study, the physical sciences and the biological sciences. The physical sciences, that's the study of inorganic matter, physics, chemistry, astronomy, geology, meteorology, engineering, biological sciences, the study of life, microbiology, cell biology, botany, genetics, zoology, and physiology. And for centuries, the two sciences were considered completely separate. But since the advent of quantum physics at the beginning of the 20th century, we know that everything is made of molecules, which in turn are made of atoms, which in turn are composed of electrons, protons, and neutrons, which in turn are composed of the smallest particle, which is a quantum. And a quantum is pure electromagnetic energy. Now, yes, there's hadrons and there's the Bose-Higgs particle, but the smallest particle of all is a quantum, and that's where the term quantum physics comes from. Now, why is this important? That's because everything in our physical and our material world universe at the subatomic level is made of the same form of electromagnetic energy. And that means at this subatomic level, there is no distinction between the physical and the biological sciences. That also means that everything, you, me, the chairs we're sitting on, the computer screens we're looking at, the radio waves this program is being broadcast on, the light of the sun, the rings of Saturn, and beyond, are all at the subatomic level made of the same particles of electromagnetic energy. And people say to me, Mark, that's really hard to wrap my head around. And my response is, you think? I mean, come on, folks. It did take Albert Einstein, his wife Mileva Einstein, Louis de Broglie, Max Planck, Werner Heisenberg, the most brilliant minds in history to figure this out. So if you're having a hard time wrapping your head around that, no problem. You're in good company. Now, physics teaches us that energy is neither created nor destroyed, only transferred from one form to another. Faith teaches us that the soul, the spirit, consciousness, pre-exists the body, comes into the body, and moves on after physical death. After a lifetime of being a psychic medium who communicates with spirits, both my parents had these abilities. I was raised in a family where spirit contact was a fact of life. And after years of researching science, physics, neuroscience, and the frequency of spirit communication, I developed the term the electromagnetic soul, which is also known as the EMS for short. And this is a 21st century term to describe what we really are, which is pure consciousness, a soul, a spirit, that is eternal electromagnetic energy. And I'm very honored that the term EMS has been adopted by many of the scientists who are studying survival of consciousness and after-death communication. Now, I've received some criticism from people saying, well, the electromagnetic soul, that seems so technical, so cold. It takes the humanity out of the soul. Well, one of my colleagues, a very dear friend of mine, said, let's take another look at the term electromagnetic soul and focus on the word soul, which is the source of universal love. And that friend and colleague is Dr. Gary Schwartz from the University of Arizona, and he's one of the top scientists in the world studying survival of consciousness and after-death communication. The brain has 5 main frequencies. We got gamma, beta, alpha, theta, and delta. All right, gamma, that's at a really high frequency. That is when your brain is running at full throttle. I mean, the joke I like to make is that's when you're a contestant on Jeopardy and you're in Final Jeopardy, or you're doing a calculus exam. All right, you're just running your brain at full speed. Now, beta is the activities of daily living. That's the state that we're all in right now. That's where you can, get up and function, drive your car, get the kids to school, and just handle the activities for daily living. Alpha is where you begin to relax. And that's the meditative state where you're drifting off. For all of our friends from Southern California, you should understand that's what I call the groovy baby state. And but what I mean by that is if anyone that meditates or is working with altered states of consciousness is very well aware of the alpha state. And then there's theta, which is where we're slipping into the dream state. Then there is delta. Delta, there's very low brainwave activity, but delta is very important because that's where you fight infections. That's where there's cellular regeneration. Now, each one of these brainwave frequencies can be measured through current technology, the EEG electroencephalogram, or a QEEG, quantitative electroencephalogram. And what's measured is the hertz, and the hertz is the frequency that they're at. So when we go to the alpha theta border at 8 hertz, that is where psychic and mediumistic activity occur. And this is extremely important because everybody here, I can only see a few of you on the screen, but for the benefit of everybody else, everybody here who has had a dream where your child has come to you in the dream state and it's coherent. And it's not like a regular dream, with that surrealistic nonsense, like all of a sudden, your car turns into a unicorn and flies around the living room. But it's a coherent contact experience that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And when you come out of it, you feel like, wow, that was real. I mean, I really did. I really had a conversation with my child. And that's because the dream state is at 8 hertz, and spirits are capable of seeing that. So the electromagnetic souls that are spirits are able to adjust their frequency to 8 hertz. And that's why spirit communication in the dream state has been documented for thousands of years. Scripture is full of it. In the longer version of this presentation, I go through biblical passages where spiritual entities communicate with people in the dream state. But this is also where psychics and mediums, we adjust our brainwave frequency to 8 hertz. And I've been studied in a number of laboratories, and that's what we meaning those of us who study the human brain and how spirit communication works, we don't understand that people like me can go from beta to alpha theta within seconds involuntarily. So for all of you, everyone is capable of doing this. It's just getting to that particular frequency. So we have our material world dimension on the bottom, the afterlife frequency on the other. They are two dynamic systems, completely separate from each other, but they do coexist and coincide with each other, and sometimes those frequencies overlap. And that's what I call the NDE zone, the near-death experience zone. And that's where the higher vibration of the afterlife frequency overlaps with the slower vibration of the material world dimension, and all forms of interdimensional communication occur. Mediumship, visitations in a dream, near-death experiences, shared-death experiences, deathbed visions, out-of-body experiences all occur during a frequency alignment of the EMS, your electromagnetic soul, with the electromagnetic souls that are in the afterlife frequency. So the EMS may be analogized as a drop of water, which, when at physical death, leaves the body and then plunges into the eternal sea of souls that I refer to as the collective consciousness. The human eye detects light wave frequencies between 430 to 770 terahertz. The human ear detects sound wave frequencies between 20 hertz and 20 kilohertz. What this means is that the human eye sees less than 0.002% of the electromagnetic spectrum, and the human ear can barely hear 2% of the sound spectrum. What this means is that there is an infinite spectrum of electromagnetic frequency beyond the perception of our physical senses. We have 5 physical senses: sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. And we can only perceive a minute fraction of the electromagnetic spectrum. Have you ever thought that you saw a spirit in a mirror? How many of you have been in the bathroom or somewhere else and you look up in the mirror and you think or you feel for a second that you can see your child or your children who've passed in the mirror? How many of you glimpse a spirit in your peripheral vision? You're doing something and you feel like, that looks like my son, and you turn, but then the spirit vanishes. How many of you have ever tried to look at a comet directly, but you can't really see it that well? When you're looking at it directly, you can see it better when you gaze at it through your peripheral vision, the side of your vision. Now, what do all 3 of these things have in common is peripheral vision. So why is it that we can only see a comet with great clarity through our peripheral vision instead of looking at it directly? And why is it that we think we're glimpsing a spirit in a mirror or seeing one in our peripheral vision? Well, all of this has to do with the structure of the human eye. And in the retina, there's 2 basic structures: cones, which are at the center of the retina, and cones detect color and details. Rods are on the periphery of the retina and are light sensitive. Cones, if you look at the diagrams on the left side, cones are best for daytime vision. Once again, they see details, they see color, and that's, things that are illuminated by sun or bright lights. But the rods on the periphery of the retina govern our peripheral vision. You also don't see color with the rods. Now, when people see a spirit in a mirror or in your peripheral vision, do you see it in color? Generally, you don't. You see the spirit as gray or black and white. Why do you think for thousands of years, when spirits have been depicted in artwork, they always have a gray, shadowy, white-black look? That's because people have been observing spirits for thousands of years with their peripheral vision. And with the advent of modern astronomy, astronomers have developed a technique known as averted vision. And that's where you look to one side to expose the most light sensitive part of your eye to see faint objects more clearly. In other words, when you see a comet, you have to switch from your cones to your rods so that you can see the comet more clearly. It's the same thing when seeing spirits. So when you feel that you see or you're picking up on a loved one, one of your children's spirits in your peripheral vision, you have to work on resisting the temptation to turn quickly, because what happens is you're switching from cones to rods, and you're going from the rods, which will detect the faint light signature, to the cones, and it gives the impression that the spirit has vanished. And I teach paranormal investigators this technique too. I was recently on a Discovery Channel show, Destinations of the Damned, where we're doing paranormal investigations, and I was teaching the investigators, when you start picking up on a spirit, don't look at it directly. Instead, gaze at the spirit through your peripheral vision. This is the electromagnetic spectrum. Think of it as a yardstick, or for our friends overseas or in Canada, a metric stick. What we can see on it is less than an inch. The EM spectrum contains many different forms of electromagnetic energy: radio waves, microwaves, infrared, ultraviolet, X-rays, gamma rays. And you can see in the center, it looks like a prism, and below that, there's a little white bar. That is the visible light spectrum. That's because the cones in our eyes, the ones that detect color and details, are only designed to detect that very small, minute segment of the EM spectrum. But a hummingbird can see ultraviolet light. Ultraviolet light's invisible to the human eye, but not to a hummingbird. Why? Because hummingbirds have an additional cone in their eyes, which enables them to see things that we can't. But then there is a unique trait among certain humans who are called tetrachromats. Tetrachromats, and scientists have called this an abnormal gene. I don't think it's abnormal. I think it's a superpower gene, because a tetrachromat has a fourth cone. They just don't have 3 cones in their eyes. They have 4 cones, and one of those cones is sensitive to yellow-green. And because of the 2 X chromosomes, which are required to have this unusual genetic trait, only women are tetrachromats. So the normal human eye sees 1 million colors. Tetrachromats, ladies, those of you who are, can see 100 million colors. Now, a lot of you ladies out there may be tetrachromats and you don't even know it, because unless you're specifically tested for this, you won't. And guys, do you ever think there's a reason that women are better at picking out colors than we are? So my practical advice is, the next time you're out shopping with your lady and she tries on a dress and says, "Does this color look good on me?" just say yes, because she already knows it does. But what about people who aren't mediums? The truth is, everyone is capable of experiencing interdimensional communication. That's why I was talking and went in so much depth about brainwave frequencies. In my book, The Afterlife Frequency, I teach what I call the RAFT technique. And there's a really fascinating story about how I developed the RAFT technique, but time won't permit me to go in it. But I think you'll find it very, very enjoyable. It was definitely a great experience for me. And the RAFT technique teaches you how to recognize, accept, feel. Now, there, the third step, feel without overthinking. A lot of people, a lot of my clients that I do readings for, are very intelligent people, and intelligent people tend to overthink things. And in spirit communication, you've got to feel first, think later, and then trust the message. Recognize, accept, feel, trust, and that is the RAFT technique. Spirits are not here to harm or frighten us. Interdimensional communication proves that our electromagnetic soul is eternal. And there is a tremendous healing power through spirit communication. I really like what both Elizabeth and Irene said at the beginning of the presentation, that helping parents heal and mediumship is a component of the journey through grief. Definitely go to grief counseling, turn to your faith, read the books about it, have your own experiences. It's a cross-disciplinary approach, but as a medium, I have seen firsthand the incredible healing power of spirit communication, and that spirits transmit messages of love, healing, and resolution. Spirit communication demonstrates how our relationship transforms from one of a physical nature to one of a spiritual nature. This is one of the reasons that my book, Never Letting Go, has been recommended by so many hospices and grief counselors around the world. Because for everybody who's watching, losing a child, there aren't even words to describe the pain and the agony that you have experienced and continue to experience and are going through. And it's extremely important to get to the point where you let go of the physicality, but never let go of the love for the person who died. And through not letting go of that love, you will acknowledge that your relationship continues, but it's not physical. It is now spiritual. In spirit communication, think of a triangle. All right, so we have the afterlife frequency where all the spirits are at the top. The medium is on the left-hand corner, and the client, that's you, on the right-hand corner. Now, when things are rocking and rolling during a reading, the afterlife frequency, spirits are transmitting messages to me. I'm explaining it to you. You're validating it. And so we got a nice triangle, a nice flow of energy going there. But one of the things that I teach people is how to avoid the no, no, no syndrome. Piece of information will come through. Does that make sense to you? No. Are you sure? No. I mean, I was doing a reading about a week ago, and I said, I'm getting a name like Christine. No, her name was Kristen. Okay, look. That was one of those readings where I had to really pull the namaste and relaxation, because it just got more and more difficult when the person was overthinking. You got to realize, people say, well, why don't spirits just tell you? Well, they are just telling us. They don't speak a human language. They speak frequency, and they're emitting a wave of electromagnetic energy that goes into my brain and gets converted into recognizable concepts based on my memories, feelings, and cultural associations. So if I hear Christine and the name is Kristen, cut the medium some slack. Okay, so no, no, no is where you're going to, right to no. And the problem with the no, no, no syndrome is like you're slamming the door in the spirit's face. Think about when you ask somebody for something and they say no, as opposed to, well, let me think about it. So if you're not sure, it's better to say, let me think about it. I don't know just yet, because immediately going to no creates an energetic block. So does overthinking and hyper analyzing. Okay. Well, why would you bring up that? That happened after he died. He didn't know her. She didn't know that. I don't understand why. Don't start doing that. Okay. If they bring something up that makes sense to you in any way, go with it. Now, another aspect to the no, no, no syndrome. I want, I want, I want. It is very normal and natural to engage in all of these things, particularly I want, I want, I want. All of them generate this angst, and the angst and desire create a block. I saw a really fascinating post recently where a woman is in front of Buddha, and she said, I want happiness. And the Buddha said to her, remove I, remove want, and now you have happiness. And see, that's a lot easier said than done. Everybody here wants contact with their child. I want that contact. Why doesn't he come to me? Why doesn't she appear in my dreams? I don't see. You're putting so much angst into it. You've got to learn to let go of the angst. And instead of saying, I want, I want, I want, before you go to bed, say, I invite you into my dreams. I welcome a sign from you. Do you see how the energy is different? You're going from I want, which has the desire, and the Buddhists, the Hindus, Christians, I mean, all the major religions talk about the desire. Once you get that out of the way and you create a more receptive environment, and you have to be patient, because, spirits are not on our timetable. They're on a much broader timetable. Collective consciousness communication. Earlier, I said when the soul leaves the body, it's like a drop of water that plunges into the eternal sea of souls of the afterlife frequency, but I call this the collective consciousness. And during spirit communication events, particularly when there is in a group setting, spirits with a commonality, such as their gender, age range, or cause of death, will come in together. Collectively, spirits will work together for the benefit of the recipients, who often share commonalities, even if the recipients don't initially realize they do. A lot of you are probably saying, what? Well, I'm going to give you a practical example. I conduct what's known as, what I refer to, and Rocky and I came up with the term light circles. And this is showing you the healing synergy of spiritual synchronicity. Let me explain that first. Synergy means the sum of the parts, or rather the whole, is greater than the sum of the parts. In other words, in a light circle, there's 6 participants, 6 attendees plus me, so there's 7 people, because 7's a sacred number, and that's why we limit it to 6 people plus me. And so the power and the energy of 6 people and their spirits working together is synergy. And synchronicity means there is no such thing as a coincidence. Spiritual synchronicity means that spirits can influence a chain of events to bring people together for a particular purpose. So in light circle spirit communication events, I have 6 attendees plus myself. I conducted a number of these at Helping Parents Heal conference last summer. And I want to take an excerpt from what happened at one of the light circle events. So everyone was seated, and suddenly the spirits of several young men connected with me. And I said, I realize you're all shining light parents. How many of you have lost sons? Every hand went up. The first commonality, all the shining light parents there had lost sons. Now, I do a lot of group readings. I do a lot of light circles, and it's very unusual for everyone there only to have lost a child of one gender. But I also know that synchronicity means there are no such thing as a coincidence. Then one spirit kept saying the name Thomas. I goes, Thomas makes sense. Thomas. A shining light dad said, I'm Thomas, and this is my wife, Sue. And then I said, it feels like a car crash. It feels like your son passed in a car crash and that he was going really fast. And Tom and Sue, they acknowledged, they said, our son Colin died in a car crash. He swerved to avoid a deer and he hit a tree. The car exploded. Then Colin switched tracks and said, now your son Colin's talking about airplanes. Tom said, I'm a commercial airline pilot. Then I said, Colin keeps repeating 1707. He says it's a transponder code, but it's also a July birthday, so it could also be 0717. Tom said, every commercial plane is assigned a unique transponder code for every flight. Every day we get a new code. Then he held up his phone and he said, I took this photo because of the transponder code I received that day was 0717. He said, Mark, you said 1707 could also be a birthday. The reason I took a picture of the transponder code was because that day was also my birthday, July 17th. So on my birthday of 0717, the transponder code the airlines gave me was 0717. Okay, so now we know we have a major synchronicity, but then I was directed to Shantia, and she didn't know Tom. She was a shining light mom, and I said, Shantia, I feel your son also died in a car crash. He says the car was too powerful. He wasn't ready to drive stick shift, said he should have taken the Volkswagen. Shantia replied, I bought my son Matthew an old Volkswagen Beetle, but that day he insisted on driving my new Porsche. He wasn't used to driving stick. He drove off a curve on a mountain. I conveyed what Matthew said to me next. Matthew said it was an issue with shifting gears and he had to look. That doesn't make sense, Shantia replied. None of the witnesses heard any gears shifting before the crash. I said, hold on. This is collective consciousness communication. The spirits of Matthew and now Colin, Tom, and Sue's son are telling me that I won't understand the gear shifting issue, but Tom will. And Tom chimed in. He said, I do understand, Shantia. Your son said he had to look. Years ago, I rented a car in England with stick shift. They drive on the left side of the road, and when I got behind the wheel, it was on the right side, meaning I had to shift with my left hand instead of with my right. It was distracting because I had to constantly look down to shift. Since Matthew wasn't used to driving stick, he would have been constantly looking down at the stick shift at the curve, causing him to drive off the road. Shantia said, I came to this light circle hoping to find an answer why Matthew ran off the road. Now I know. It was a winding mountain road from Thousand Oaks to Malibu in California. Tom said, I know that road. It's ironic, but driving on that road with my son Colin is one of my happiest memories. He was with me when I bought a new Jaguar in Thousand Oaks. We took that road because it was scenic. It was the perfect father-son day. And he said, it was so awesome that I took a short video clip of the drive on my phone. And here's the clip. Shanti said, my God, that's the exact curve where my son died. Spiritual synchronicity occurs when electromagnetic souls guide someone in our material world to act as an instrument of healing and even to be in the right place at the right time, often without that person ever realizing it. Information received from spirits unfolds at its own pace, and it may take time. Many people find this exasperating because they want answers and messages which make sense instantly. Sometimes that is the case. Other times it isn't. The beauty of spiritual synchronicity is that the unfolding always occurs at just the right time. And these are the two shining light parents. That's Shantia with Rocky. And there's Tom, and he's holding up the phone with the transponder code. And Shantia said to Rocky, this is the first day I've smiled since Matthew passed. I want to thank everybody for your patience and your attention. I do have a light circle coming up next month, the May Light Circle. I also do private one-on-one phone sessions, and you can find out about all of those through my website, which is afterlifefrequency.com. Every Thursday, I co-host The Psychic and the Doc with the amazing Dr. Pat Basile, the host of the long-time, multiple award-winning The Dr. Pat Show. And people call in, I do readings for callers. Dr. Pat helps people understand the magnitude of the message. I'm very honored that we just won Best Radio Show of the Year now 2 years in a row, 2024, now 25. My books are up here. I was just recently on a Discovery Channel show, Destinations of the Damned. It's streaming on Discovery Channel. It's kind of a spooky wooky show, but I add a scientific element to the basis of it. And I'll be on 2 magazines that are coming up. So once again, I want to thank Elizabeth, Irene, Rocky, Lisa, everyone connected with Helping Parents Heal. I'm open for some Q&A if you would like to do that.
Yes, we would love
so-
to. And before we do that, I would like to be able to announce on this meeting that Mark Anthony is now an honorary board member of Helping Parents Heal. We have We have several honorary board members who are going to be helping us as we move forward. Mark Anthony, Reverend Sue Frederick, Suzanne Giesman, Dr. Mary Neal, Dr. Jeff O'Driscoll, Jeffrey Olson, Dr. Mark Pitstick, and Suzanne Wilson. And we're very excited to be working with them. We also have a new board member who is also a Shining Light parent, and that is Lisa Wilcoxon, who's also on here. So I just wanted to quickly say that. I also wanted to tell you, Mark, that while you were doing the talking about the synchronicities, it was pretty incredible because, first of all, Valerie says that she lives 5 minutes from that same road,
Oh, my Lord.
Thousand Oaks in Southern California. Also, Deborah says, I was in that light circle. There were so many amazing moments and synchronicities.
Oh, thank you, Deborah.
I think that's really fun that she joined tonight as well. But I also have Heidi asking a question that maybe you could answer for her and for all of us. I think that I certainly know what the answer is going to be, but it's a very reassuring answer. What about infants? Can they see more of the electromagnetic spectrum? Sometimes my 7-week-old granddaughter seems to be looking and smiling at someone over my shoulder, and she thinks that it might be her son. So could you maybe say something about that?
Absolutely. I started seeing spirits, at least acknowledging them, when I was 3.5. So I have from personal experience that very young children do see spirits. And you also have to realize that babies, young children they're a clean slate. They haven't been indoctrinated with belief systems and the no syndrome and what they're supposed to see and behave like. So they will pick up on spirits. You'll note that when you do readings with me, I always ask if you do a phone reading that you don't have any dogs or any pets in the room, because dogs in particular pick up on spirits and they'll start barking. So obviously I can't be doing a reading if I got, in the background. Because the thing is, they get agitated. They don't know what it is. Rocky and I witnessed something really amazing. I was doing an event in Buffalo, New York, and on the front row there was a woman. She was with a seeing eye dog. The woman was blind, and all of a sudden, I was talking about the spirit of a German Shepherd coming through, and her seeing eye dog got up and started interacting with the dog, and everybody with her was freaking out because, like, they're saying, the seeing eye dog, her dog never does that. And what it was, because they're so highly trained, this dog recognized the spirit and began to interact with it. Now, getting back to children, children can definitely see spirits, and that's why a lot of children will talk about seeing spirits. But generally, what happens by the time they're 4 or 5, it seems like their ability to perceive spirits fades. Now, with some of us, like myself, it doesn't, so it's not unusual. So I hope that answers your question.
That sounds like a great answer, Mark. And I also just want to say that we have Shabnam saying that her wedding anniversary is July 17th, which that's not a coincidence at all either. It's just kind of amazing. But Lyndall is saying, my dogs aggressively barked at my son the day before he passed. I wonder if that might be a premonition that they knew that he might be leaving or moving to another plane of existence. I don't know if you have any thought on that.
That's entirely possible. When I was a kid, we always hear they're dumb animals. No, they're not dumb animals. It's a different form of intelligence. Okay. Yesterday, there was an earthquake in San Diego, and at the San Diego Zoo, there was a bunch of cameras where the elephants are, and all of a sudden, the elephants they're able to hear through their feet in addition to their ears, And all of a sudden, the elephants all formed a defensive circle with the youngest, the baby elephant in the middle. And like they had their backs to the baby elephant, and so that their heads were pointing outwards. And zoologists all over the world are fascinated by this. They said as soon as they detected rumbles in the earth, they instinctively went into this defensive formation. And as soon as the earthquake stopped, the elephants looked around, everything was cool, and they went back to just doing elephant stuff. So the thing is, animals are able to perceive frequency and vibration in a way that we probably would if we weren't so inundated with technology. I mean, anytime we got a question, you pick up the phone, Google, tell me this, Siri, tell me this, Alexa, tell me this. Remember, those of us who can remember the ancient times before answer machines, and when the phone would ring and you go, oh, that's mom, and you'd pick it up and that was mom. Do you think that was a coincidence? No, you were picking up on that vibrational frequency. So once again, to answer your question, animals can be tuned in to different frequencies. And the reason the dog may have been barking aggressively, not because he was angry with the young man, but because the dog knew a distress was coming, similar to the way elephants. I want to say something else about elephants. In my book, Evidence of Eternity, and in all my books, make sure you start at chapter 1 and go through it, because each chapter introduces a concept you need to know for the next chapter. And there was this guy in South Africa, and his last name was Anthony. No relation, but he spent his entire life finding wounded elephants, including those that had been mistreated in circuses, and he brought them to a preserve in South Africa. And so he lived on the preserve, but this is thousands and thousands of acres. I mean, it's a gigantic area. And all of a sudden, he got really sick and he was dying. And to this day, zoologists cannot explain this. All of the elephants from all parts of that preserve came and stood in front of his house until he died. How did they know? How do they know these things? So we're not the only intelligent species on the planet. And to underscore that, just turn on the news.
Yes, I agree. I want to tell you some other things that people are saying, which are really interesting. For instance, first of all, Julie is saying our daughter works at the San Diego Safari Park in charge of the rhinos. Isn't that pretty cool that she takes care of the rhinos, and you're just talking about the elephants. And then also, Lyndall is saying, yes, we absolutely believe our dogs knew our son was going to leave. So this was what you were talking about earlier. And then also, we have another person earlier in the conversation talking about the fact that her younger daughter watched herself in the mirror and told me that it felt like she saw her sister who passed away.
There you
And
go. Yeah.
so this is like Raymond Moody's mirror gazing, but maybe you can explain a little bit about the best way to do that, because we can all see our loved ones in the mirror if we follow his example. I'm not sure if you would like to or not. Just tell a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'm aware of the technique. I don't teach mirror gazing because I just tune in. It's not something that I have practiced, but I've observed people doing it. And Dr. Raymond Moody does teach a technique with it. A lot of people use black mirrors, and a lot of people, oh, black mirrors, black magic. You got to realize with a black mirror, you can see things that you can't with a regular mirror. So that's why they're doing that. And what you're going to be doing with a mirror to see a spirit is you're going to be employing the technique of averted vision. So instead of looking at it directly, you're going to be observing with your peripheral vision. And it takes time to do that because, we're socialized and trained to look at something. If you hear something, you look at it. directly, but there's other ways of perceiving things. And when it comes to visual observation of spirits, we have to rely on the rods in our peripheral vision.
Wonderful. So Shabnan is saying Lawrence Anthony is the name, right? So is this the
Correct.
gentleman? Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
And then Vlada is saying, my son and his friend are both in spirit. And last week, his friend's mom had a reading. And instead of her son, my son communicated with, I guess, with her through the medium. How can that be explained?
I want. And I'm not faulting anybody. When you go into a reading, you want to hear from your son so much without meaning to, inadvertently, by putting that desire, you're creating a block. And spirits know that. So while she was unintentionally and inadvertently and absolutely, she's not doing anything wrong. It's just very normal. Like, you want to hear this. The other spirit came in to get around the block. Okay. So if he came in and that was her son and his friend, then accept that as a collective consciousness communication message. People tend to think of spirit communication as being individualized, one spirit per person. They don't come and go, hello, I'm spirit number one. Here's the 3 things you need to know. I'm done. Bye. No, instead they come, Lisa's laughing because she knows exactly what I'm talking about. Think of all your spirits as a chorus. And right now, your son is the lead singer of the chorus. Because why is your son bringing up stuff that only cousin Gertrude knew? Well, because his energy is linked to other spirits, linked to other spirits, linked to other spirits. This is also why, when communicating with a spirit, they can present information that far exceeded the scope of anything they knew in this world. So I hope that addresses the question.
That's a beautiful answer. And the last answer, the last question I think we have time for is from Yelena, and she's asked it twice now, so I'd love to be able to get your answer to this. What is the best way to bring our frequency to the alpha level?
Meditation, because when you meditation and prayer, this is a good week to talk about prayer. Last weekend, Passover just wrapped up. This is Holy Week for people of the Christian faith. And, this is not the only week that we should meditate and pray, but, I have to admit on Prime, I've been watching this mini series about Jesus and all that, just because it just feels good. It feels good, and it's okay to do something that feels good. But prayer and meditation do exactly that. They bring you out of beta into the alpha theta border. Think about prayer. Catholics will pray the rosary. I was raised Catholic, but there's the constant repetition. Hindus, that'll say like Namaste Shiva, Namaste Rama, or you can listen to George Harrison, Hare Krishna. The thing is, and I'm not being funny here, but a lot of the religions have a repetitious chanting, because what happens when you do that, whether it's a chant or a prayer, you're taking your focus out of beta and shifting it into alpha. And you can also do the same thing in a much more quiet manner through meditation. To think of it this way, prayer is when we talk to God, to the divine power. Meditation is when we listen.
Beautiful. Yes. So, of course, all of us should be meditating. And I know that that's very, very difficult. It's hard to still the monkey mind. But again, in these important weeks of celebration for major religions, this might be a good time to dive into prayer as well, which allows us to be able to concentrate on going within instead of going without. JC is saying this was amazing. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that everyone was on here. We had some great questions. What a great presentation, Mark. I'm so glad that this is something that people can go back to and listen to. And I also just want to again thank you for being an honorary board member. We're just
Wow,
so
thank you.
grateful. I also just want to say that people are asking what Rocky's role is. Rocky is one of the most important people in the afterlife community. She is such a mover and a shaker. She's also Mark Anthony's manager. She is a huge friend to both Irene and myself, as well as to everyone at Helping Parents Heal, and as well as to a lot of people in the afterlife community. So we are so grateful to have Rocky on here this evening as well. And let's see, Irene, did you have anything that you wanted to say?
No, just thank you, Mark. What a great presentation. I can't wait to watch it again.
Oh, thank you. And for everyone listening, Rocky's my manager. She'll work it out with Elizabeth and Irene. I would be honored to come back to do an evening of just readings. But what it is, a lot of people are asking about my theories and especially the averted vision techniques. But I do highly recommend my books because they do explain these things in greater detail. The Afterlife Frequency teaches you the RAFT technique. But all of my books are going to teach you how to recognize signs from spirits. Also, I do write for Best Holistic Life magazine. If you go to my website, afterlifefrequency.com, you can find out about that. I write a lot of articles about coping with grief. In the June issue, that's the men's health issue. And I wrote an article, Real Men Are Not Afraid to Cry. And I take the some of what I was talking about tonight is only a part of what I'm explaining there, because I do work with the Shining Light Dads and I work with a lot of men, because it's important for us to learn how to embrace our feelings. Guys, we have hearts, tear ducts, and feelings for a reason. We are designed to cry. We just process our grief differently. And my article, Real Men Are Not Afraid to Cry, teaches guys how to cry.
Beautiful. I just want to also say that Bonnie is asking how she can see the slides again. We're going to be posting this on our YouTube channel for Helping Parents Heal, so you'll be able to go back through and see all of these slides that were in the presentation. She's also saying that she loves all of your books.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, if I can, I'm granting permission to Helping Parents Heal to put this on the YouTube channel, but all my slides are copyrighted and proprietary. But part of my life's mission or my ministry is to work with Helping Parents Heal. So please put this on your YouTube channel.
Thank you. That's very, very kind of you. I didn't even ask, but I guess that's just such wonderful news that it's possible. And I know that everyone is going to benefit from this. So thank you, Mark. And we'll be very careful about the copyright part. And right now, we just always like to have people unmute and say thank you and good evening. So if you guys would like to do so, then go ahead and do so.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
This was
This
wonderful.
was
Thank you very
amazing.
much,
God
everyone.
bless.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Bye, everybody.
Thank
Thank you
you.
both, Mark and Rocky. Thanks for
Thank you.
Lisa.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
See you guys
God
soon
bless.
here. Bye,
Good
everyone.
night.
Bye.
Bye.